I'm Samantha Anderson, Director of Communications for Newton Public Schools, and I'm here with Superintendent Van Rankin, and we're here for your first Board of Education recap and Q&A session in a while. It's been a month and a half. I was afraid I was going to forget my name. Now, first things first, the board did move to remove the COVID-19 restrictions. Can you kind of just go into that? And is it now a free-for-all? Or are we just like, oh, we're done? What's kind of the thought process? Will we still be monitoring things, that kind of stuff?
We'll be monitoring statistics and listening to the local and regional and state health professionals. When you look at our percent positive, I'm just now going to their site. It's like 2.78% positive. We've got 8 active cases in the county. We've been pretty steady for quite some time. The executive order, I believe, actually ends today at the state level, the state of emergency. So that's going to be allowed to expire. Numbers are good. Our masks, we've been mask optional since the 29th, I believe it is, of May. Feel pretty good about how things are going. We obviously will keep an eye on things, but we felt removing the restrictions was a good thing to do at this time. My phone is ringing, so it's going to ring in the background. If you hear the noise, I'm not going to turn it off so they can go to voicemail. So I apologize for that if you hear that. However, in the fall, we will have to have some sort of a return to learn plan of some sort. And so there's actually a webinar tomorrow morning I'm going to listen to from the Kansas State Department of Education that's going to go through some examples of what we can do for that. We don't anticipate doing things different than what would be normal school. We just have to have definition for that. And the reason we have to have that plan is to qualify for the make sure that we get access to the ESSER dollars, the federal funding that's coming down, the second and third wave of federal dollars.
Okay, and this is just a reminder that if you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and we'll get to them at the end of our recap. And then with the ESSER dollars, you gave an update last night, what we plan to do with some of that money, how we plan to get, how much we plan to get. Can you just run through that real quickly?
Yeah, there were essentially 3 levels of federal funding that was awarded to schools, not counting the Sparks dollars that came through the county. So the first round of what they called CARES dollars came out last year. I believe the district got around $500,000 for that, okay? And that was used for all of the initial COVID things, the sanitation, some health workers and things of that nature. In January, the second level of COVID relief was passed. And then, gosh, a month or so after that with the new administration, the third round of COVID relief was passed. And those are referred to as ESSER dollars. So ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. Okay, ESSER $2 for our district amounts to $2.28 million. ESSER 3 amounts it's $5.14 million, rounding those figures. So we've got about $7.43 million of these funds that we're going to be able to spend from the federal government. The way the rules work, we essentially have until September of 2023 to spend the ESSER $2, which is that 2.28 million. And then we have until September of 2024 to spend the $5.2 million, 5.139. We have to set aside a certain amount for specific things. For example, with the ESSER 2, we have to set aside 20% for what they're calling the learning loss mitigation. So, but then there are 15 categories through which we can spend those dollars. And so we have to go through a special application process at the State Department of Education. We submit an application to be able to, that has to be approved by a committee there and then by the state board, and then we get the blessing to go. Some of the things that we are looking at, we're looking at spending a large dollar amount on our HVAC systems. That's one of the allowable expenses. So, initially we had talked about as much as 50% of those dollars to spend on our HVAC. We probably won't be spending quite 50%. Like in this first round, for example, with the 2.28, right now I've got about $840,000 earmarked for HVAC, okay? And the reason it's 840,000 rather than the 1.1 million is really we're going to try to reinforce the mental health needs of students. When you look at the opportunity we have here, we need to treat it as such, but we need to remember that after 3 years, these dollars are no longer there. So whatever we do has to meet some certain purposes that allow us to go back to normal operation in terms of personnel and programs, or we've purchased things that last a long time. One of the things that's been a real issue, not just during COVID, even prior to COVID, it has been the mental health of all of our students and frankly, the adults and even families. And so we're going to use part of those dollars for the next 3 years to hire some staff. Those staff would be associated with, for example, we're going to try to hire 3 mental health liaisons to work with the mental health organizations to help provide services on site. So they would coordinate like case management, for example, through Prairie View and other organizations to be able to have some of that mental health service being provided on site. Usually, or not usually, one of the problems with getting kids some of the mental health services they need, parents have to take off of work to go get the kids, then take them to those appointments. If we can get this set up, and in a previous district I was involved with, we were able to, through a grant through the state, that grant has not been funded the past 2 years for new schools. We're hoping that it gets funded in the future, because if it does, we're shovel ready, so to speak, to where we could tap into that. But we hired these liaisons that serve as coordinators for this between the school and mental health to allow all of those services, or as much as is possible, to take place on site. So parents aren't having to take off of work, and kids aren't taken out of school for a longer period of time. So we're gonna look at that. We're also looking at hiring some additional aides for that 3-year period of time. That's going to allow our buildings to provide more academic and social and emotional support. In a couple of our elementary buildings, for example, we do have staff that some of our aides that are hired specifically to man some rooms that are essentially de-escalation rooms, where students that are really struggling, that recognize the fact that they're struggling, they can go to those rooms and just kind of refocus, cool off, and then return back to class. This isn't a punitive type of a thing. So those types of opportunities are real important when you then begin to get kids to start thinking about, hey, I'm having this issue, and instead of blowing my stack and becoming dysregulated in the classroom, I can go to this room because we have a plan in place that allows that. So those are other things that we're looking at from that mental health perspective. We're also looking to provide quite a bit of training for staff over the course of the next 3 years. If I haven't said this kind of stuff already, I will say that throughout the time that I'm here in this district, is that we've also got to work to make sure that, like I said, at the end of this 3 years, that money is no longer there. So if we can provide training for our staff at high levels to where they truly become trauma responsive in terms of how to deal with kids that are struggling and with adults that are struggling, because sometimes it's the adult that's having the problem, and that a kid has triggered a behavior in an adult that isn't necessarily adaptive, to the kid learning from the situation. And if you need me to expand upon that anytime, give me a call. I'll be glad to sit down and talk with you about what I mean. So we want to provide that high level training over the course of the next 3 years, in which, we're also working to fix some of our adults that struggle too. We also want to provide academic support. So we're looking at enhancing in all of the attendance centers, the academic support after school. We're also going to look to enhance more summer programming for next year. We actually have been involved in training for the past couple of weeks through some competency-based learning. That's some really, really great stuff that we hope we can begin to transfer more into our district. We also have the ability, and this, if you watched the board meeting last night, I called it's referred to as premium pay. So we can use some of those dollars to provide some salary enhancement for all of our staff, which is something we'll look at. Some of those dollars are also going to be used to continue, like for example, we purchased additional software or access to additional software applications to be able to use during the pandemic. We want to continue some of that. We're going to increase like Canvas use. So it'll be available throughout the district. There's some other programs, Seesaw Plus, Nearpod, and some of those others that were really good for teachers and for students that will continue. We're also going to continue the access to hotspots. So for those of you families that don't have internet access at home, this will allow us to continue to use those 275 hotspots for the next 3 years, where you could check those out. So those students that need to have that internet access at home that you cannot provide, that will not be a barrier to education. So when you start adding all of that stuff up, it really does eat into those dollar amounts. So out of this $2.28 million, about 2.4 of that right now, if we were to go with everything that I had presented on that list, would be for academic, technology, social, emotional support. So, and also some salary enhancement in the form of that premium pay. So we're going to continue to work on this plan. We will submit this within the next 2 to 6 weeks to the state. It'll go through their process, and then we can have those things in place as we begin the school year or shortly thereafter. In all honesty, some of the mental health supports will come shortly after, but a lot of our training things will be prior to that time. So that's a lot of stuff in about a 5-minute time frame, but there's a lot of stuff on there. For that many dollars, we need to make sure that we're being fiscal stewards of that and really spending that from a forward-looking position to where our district can be enhanced, and not just after 3 years we go back to quote normal. We want a new normal that's better for our kids.
Thank you. And then one thing we have been talking about a lot and we'll keep talking about is the at-risk funding and how the state decides how much a school district gets. Usually it's off of the free and reduced meals. I think we've explained that before, even though it doesn't actually fund free and reduced meals. That was just kind of the barometer that they used to judge how much a district would get. However, the federal government is paying for free lunches, so they aren't filling out the free and reduced lunch forms anymore. So now what's our answer? What is the state doing to figure out which districts get the at-risk funding, and what can parents do to make sure that we get the funding that we need as a district?
Well, as you mentioned, Sam, that free lunch application that would have been completed in the past serves as a proxy for what they call at-risk funding at the state level. And it's honestly a very good proxy for that, okay? So with the federal government not putting out those free lunch forms, there's going to be a household economic survey that we can use in its place. And so what we had talked about last night at the board meeting, and we'll have it approved at the 28th board meeting in terms of the actual process through which we'll do this, is that we are going to try to encourage our parents to fill out this household economic survey, whether you qualify or not. And what we'll do is we'll give you a $10 reduction in your curriculum fee, or what they call the textbook fee, the enrollment fee. Technically, it's a curriculum fee. Okay. And also, if you have a technology fee like they do in grades 7 through 12, we would also give you $10 off of that. So no matter if you qualify for the free lunch or not, based upon that household economic survey, if you just complete the form, we would give you automatically $10 off of each one of those. K through 6, they don't have the technology survey, so we're not going to give you $20 off of the curriculum fee, but you could have potentially up to $20 per kid. When you do the math on that, it's a lot. With 31 or 3,200 students, it could be $31,000 or $32,000 if everyone did that in terms of a reduction. But what you also have to remember, if you qualify for the free lunch, we do give you the curriculum fee and then a reduction in other fees. So we can waive the curriculum fee if you qualify, but you have to have the form in order to be able to, or on file, in order to be able to qualify for a reduction in technology and some other fees that are listed on the district website. So we want to try this as an incentive. I've said this before on other podcasts, on other Facebook Live sessions. We lost a couple $100,000 last year because of what we anticipated from a budget perspective. We were about 90 kids short, 90 students short on that application for free lunch. That's about 0.484 for FTE, which is about $2,200. So if you figure we need about 20 or so kids, a little more than 20 students in order to be able to recover that 0.484 in terms of this incentive. So, doing the math on there, if we have 45 or 50 kids that sign up for that, or pardon me, families that sign up for that qualify for that free lunch that we didn't have last year, we're way ahead dollars wise. So we thought we give that a try, and we'll put out promotional information. I know, Sam, Sam has scheduled a Facebook Live to have a discussion about how we're actually going to do that. Since we're not collecting enrollment fees until July 1, we do have a little bit of time, but not too much. So we want you to not miss out on that opportunity. And what we'll probably do is put an end date. Our count day for student enrollment is September 20th. So in order to qualify for that reduced fee, you'd have to have your form in before that time. Like we'll say like September 15th, just as an arbitrary date. So, but we'll have more of a process lined out that we can make very, very public and try to get it out in many different ways, because not everybody listens to Facebook or Twitter or reads the emails or that stuff. So we'll try to get it out on a bunch of different platforms.
Okay, this is just the last call. We haven't gotten any questions yet. It's summer, so that's understandable. Everybody needs a break. But if you have a question, make sure you put it in the comments section. And do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Summer's going by fast. We've got a lot of stuff going on in the district right now with a bunch of different summer academic recovery programs that are taking place. So, the buildings are pretty darn busy right now. We were real excited. We had some pretty high level competency-based training, education training last week or the last week and a half that we're excited about in terms of the future for Newton Public Schools. So just keep looking for information from the school. We send out a lot. We appreciate your support.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you everybody for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your week.
See you in a couple of weeks, folks.